Undaunted, bringing into the news on Church Stories. I am Oyi Okbala. Let's begin. Good evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing to the news on Church Stories. I am Oyi Okbala. Let's begin. The recent incident of a young girl throwing a baby after giving birth in Bamenda is a disturbing and heartbreaking phenomenon that ignites the growing social ills in the society, particularly in the context of the ongoing war in Amazonia. The fact that the child appears to have been delivered prematurely suggests that the girl may have been forced to give birth in secrecy without access to proper medical care or support. This incident is not an isolated one, as it comes on the heels of a similar case in Boya just last week. The increasing number of abandoned children and abortions in these areas is deep pain of the devastating consequences of the 8-year conflict in Amazonia. The war has led to a breakdown in social structures, economic instability, and a rise in violent crimes, including the rape of young girls and women. The war has created an environment in which young girls are increasingly vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. Many have been forced to engage in erotic relationships, often as a means of survival, and are then left to deal with the consequences of unwanted pregnancies. The lack of access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunities has further exacerbated the problem, leaving many young girls without the means to support themselves or their children. The situation is further complicated by the fact that many mothers have been killed or displaced during the war, leaving their children without care or support or even training. The absence of a stable family structure and the lack of social services have created a vacuum that has been filled by predatory individuals who take advantage of vulnerable girls and women. The rape of young girls and women is a particularly heinous crime that has been perpetrated with impunity in Amazonia. Many cases go unreported due to fear of stigma, retaliation, or lack of trust in the authorities. The conflict has created a culture of silence and impunity where perpetrators are rarely held accountable for their action. The killings of mothers is another tragic consequence of the conflict and the war. Many women have been caught in the crossfire, killed by stray bullets, or targeted by armed groups. The loss of a mother is, of course, a devastating blow to a family, leaving children without care, support, or guidance. The emotional trauma caused by such a loss can have a long-lasting effect on a child's development and social well-being. We call on all freedom fighters to take notice of the growing humanitarian crisis in Amazonia and take immediate action to address the root causes of these social ills. This includes providing support for education, healthcare, and economic empowerment programs, as well as working to establish a stable and secure environment in which girls and women can live without fear of violence or exploitation. The government and local authorities must also take responsibility for protecting the rights and dignities of girls and women, particularly in the areas affected by the war. These issues include providing access to safe and legal services, as well as supporting survivors of rape and abuse. Ultimately, the solution to these social ills lies in addressing the underlying causes of the conflict of this senseless war, and of course, working towards a lasting peace. And this requires a commitment to dialogue, reconciliation, and reconstruction, as well as a willingness to address the historical grievances and injustice that have fueled the conflicts. The people of Ambazonia, like I will always say, deserve a better future, one in which girls and women can live without fear of violence or exploitation, and in which children can grow up in a safe and supportive environment. It is our collective responsibility to work towards this goal and to ensure that the rights and dignities of all individuals are respected and protected. Well, all these and more we take on tonight on Undaunted, with Bar.Tim Mbeseha already seated to give us his own quota of the analysis. But first, let's take the prime headlines. On tonight's Undaunted, let's start with the alarm over teachers' absenteeism in schools in Ambazonia and, of course, in La République de Cameroun. Also tonight, a young girl has dumped the fruit of her womb after intentionally forcing the baby out prematurely in Bamenda. A thief has been caught and killed in Bamenda. Also tonight, we'll take a look at the overburdened by the failures of BS regime, where a La République de Cameroun sergeant publicly disposes of his weapons. On the African scene, we'll take a ride to the Congolese president, where he has vowed to restore government authority as Rwanda-backed rebels advance. Meanwhile, on the foreign scene, BRICS on the rise, while diverse bloc expands global influence. But can it change traditional powers? Well, that we'll find out in the news. Let's get the news in full briefings. A recent report indicates that 1,226 teachers are absent from their positions in Ambazonia and La République de Cameroun secondary schools. This is largely affecting students' education. Statistics were listed in a memo from the Colonial Minister of Secondary Education, that is Nalover Younger, emphasizing the challenges facing a system already struggling with a teacher shortage. The report in full says that on the 27th of January, Colonial Minister Younger revealed that the absenteeism issues is significant, especially in remote high schools. Now, this follows a prior report from November 2024, which noted that 1,509 teachers were absent for various reasons. The most impacted areas are the Midland and Savannah zone, with 201 teachers, and the Atlantic zone, with 299 teachers. In La République, Affected areas include the west with 262 and the north with 221. Many educators are reportedly leaving to pursue better opportunities abroad, particularly in Canada. The current insecurity has placed teachers in vulnerable positions in affected areas. Educators have faced threats and intimidation, making it increasingly difficult for them to carry out their work safely. This climate of fear has contributed to rising absenteeism. Meanwhile, critics are pointing to the low salaries, which they believe play a crucial role in this trend. The ongoing economic challenges and systemic issues, along with the threat faced by teachers, have forced many to leave, especially with the colonial regime's failure to provide competitive salaries and, of course, a safe working conditions. It is feared that if meaningful changes are not made, the education crisis is likely to worsen and further jeopardize students' futures. What future are we talking about here? Begins my first question. Of course, we have Bar.Tim Mbeseha. The future where Ambazonians have cried out to say, it's not safe. There is no normalcy. Teachers are scared. Students are scared. Teachers are not paid. Salaries are owed. How can the leaders of tomorrow be made in environments where teachers are owed, teachers are not? And how can a teacher even teach with a hungry stomach? Bar.Tim Mbeseha, welcome again to Tonight's Undaunted. How are you today?
Great. Thank you for having me once more.
Let's talk about the absenteeism from school. This report says over 1,556 teachers absent. And that's because of so many reasons, which includes, of course, poor salaries, insecure environments, and what have you. And this is not the first time. But then we already know that the insecurity is the height of it all. I can remember when Ambazonians, the government of Ambazonia, came out to say, it's not safe. Parents, keep your children at home. But it seemed like, of course, the war against Ambazonia was high. And, they projected it to look like there was no mercy. But this is a report that comprises of even La République to Cameroun, as it were, 1,556 teachers. And that would make me to ask, how many teachers are there in general?
Oh, well, the problem is that we have these colonial ministers giving reports of what they call schools in particular. They give you half the report. They're not telling the truth. Are the teachers absent or something else is wrong? The teachers might be absent in Yaoundé, in Bafoussam, and other places. But the case of Ambazonia, what they call Northwest Southwest, the institutions don't even exist. Since 2016, 2017, what they call government schools are virtually shut down. And so the teachers are not supposed to be there because there's nobody going to school. The school shut down because in the majority of cases, the government came with its forces, burnt down some of the schools, fired on the villagers, and everybody ran away with their child. Because most of the government schools that I know are not boarding schools, they are day schools. They're supposed to live with their parents, with their family, and go to school. And if the family is forced to abandon the area where they live, they cannot abandon the area and leave the child there. The area that I know, the schools have completely fallen apart. The structures have deteriorated, they have collapsed. So it's not just a question of being absent because of salary or whatever. No, it is, as far as Southern Cameroon or Amazon is concerned, it is for the simple fact that there are no schools. Maybe we get to be reminded that from 1972, the government purported to take over schools. So the majority of those schools are essentially called government schools. Maybe they pretend by trying to take the temperature from big towns, Bamenda, Buya, There's no where the population lives. Those who live in urban centers like Buya, Bamenda, Manfe, and so on and so forth, constitute less than a third of the population of Amazonia. And so the schools are non-existent. It is not so much because of salary. Because when the schools were existent, even as low as the salary was, they were prepared to live on that and survived on that. The conditions were so bad, but they lived on it. And so, without the schools being available, the minister is not telling you the truth that the schools are not there, but simply saying that teachers are absent. They are trying to fake, hey, stop noise. They are trying to fake a normalcy. That normalcy has returned. People ought to be going to school, and so they are not going, which is false. There's no normalcy in those areas. I know, I come from the BLM, for example. There is nothing in the whole of the BLM called government school. They are not functional. Those that claim to be functional have less than 10 students each. And so what do you expect a teacher who is risking his life to come to that area and say he wants to teach? You're not even getting there. Most of the places are occupied by the military camps. The military was never meant to live alongside with the population, especially children and people. That's not the climate for successful schooling. And so it is not as simple as the minister tells. He gives you a figure. I mean, I'm saying the northwest, southwest, west, and so on and so forth, to try to tell you that the same conditions that prevail in the west, in the north, in the south, are the same conditions that prevail in the so-called northwest and southwest. No, that's a lie. That's a lie. And so the schools closed down. In fact, the government shut down the schools. In some instances, the government by themselves transferred the teachers away when they realized that nobody was going to the school. So sitting up there and saying schools, teachers have been absent, just like, what are you telling us to do? What do they want the public to do? They know the teachers. They have their payroll, they know their names. So if teachers are absent with impunity, they don't need your permission or my permission to take action against an absentee worker. But they will not do it because the teachers did not voluntarily go away. The government drove them away with the war. And so putting a note there that 2,500, whatever amount, whatever number is absent, is begging the issue. What do they want? What does the minister want us to do? What does the minister want the population to do? To go hunting those teachers? If they are a government and those people are their workers, they should have a way to trace them. They should have a way to hold them accountable. Not the public. Putting on the CRTV or whatever is not a solution. Again, I say, as far as Amazonia is concerned, Northwest, Southwest, they call it, there are no functional government schools there. The schools were closed down directly and indirectly by the government. Who is the teacher? Who is the people who were going to school on fire? We have seen all these pictures. Go to the Amazonia Genocide Library and see what schools were burnt down by the government. See what schools were destroyed by the government. See how villages were burnt down by the government. If a school is found in a village, call it Kwakwa or any other village, Mbonge, and you burn down the village, what do you expect to remain there? The parents have escaped, for those of them who survived. Those who did not survive, those who survived, some went as refugees to neighboring countries, others went and became internally displaced. And so they are begging the issue once more. They are not telling the truth. If they want schools to come back, if they want teachers to go back to their work and do it normally, let them do the right thing. Let them address the root causes of the problem. And then, of course, after the root causes of the problem, they will do what they call reconstruction, not what they are doing now. If they destroy your house in Mengu, or in Kwakwa, or in Bange, they should be able to go and reconstruct that building for the family to go back there. Not the question are going to be wooden bridges and say they are reconstructing. No, that's not what reconstruction means after war. You are putting up a bridge, a wooden bridge, for who to go across. The parents now have the houses to live in. The houses did not fall on their own volition. The government destroyed them. And so again, the minister is lying. She's not telling you the bare truth of what is happening, especially with Ambazonia. So bringing that thing in the global absence of teachers in Cameroon and claiming that they have gone to Canada, they've gone to Japan, wherever they've gone, is begging the issue. Why are they going to Canada only now? The past 5 years. Was Canada not existing in the 2000s? Was Canada not existing? Canada has always been there. America has always been there. The Middle East has always been there. So they didn't just fall from the moon and become attractive to us. No. Again, end the war, rebuild the country, the villages, the communities in which the schools were found, rebuild the schools by themselves, and then you can complain of teachers not being there. You don't even need to complain to us. If teachers are not there, if all these conditions are met, look for more teachers and put there. If the teachers are earning their salary when the condition is good for them to go to work, and they are not going to work, then you have failed as an employer. and not the community, you have failed as an employer. So that's my contribution to that topic. Over to you.
Of course, we know that nothing is actually hidden under the sun. We will definitely get all of the sides as it unfolds with this absenteeism of teachers in schools. But moving on, we have this very delicate topic where a young girl has dumped the fruit of her womb after intentionally forcing the baby out prematurely in Bamenda. Well, we can say that the ongoing war in Bamenda is making it for people to making it very difficult, I would have to add, for people to have 3 square meals, and no one is willing to add another mouth to feed. A young girl has thrown a baby away after giving birth in Bamenda. From the images of the child captured in the video you're presently seeing, the child appears to have been delivered prematurely. This incident and this case of abandoning a child after delivery by this young girl in Bamenda comes to add to that of last week in Boya, remember? Or to major Amazonian towns. Now, this increasing number of issues depicts the growing engagement of teenagers in erotic relationships, which we can say is a direct consequence of the 8 years and counting war in Amazonia. Just imagine. Very scary. The war in Amazonia has greatly affected sources of living. Parents and guardians are becoming more and more unable to meet their responsibilities vis-a-vis the ones depending on them. This has forced many young girls to use what they want to get what they want. The immediate consequence is unwanted pregnancy or unreasonable abortion, and of course premature birth or throwing away babies. But it's scary. How do you carry a child, give birth to that child, and throw that child away? That's because there is no quality education, and these are more we are talking about. This young girl, Undaunted, is still yet to get the name, is with the Colonial police at this point. Would that solve the case? Oh well, Bar.Tim Mbeseha, is this the kind of topic you want to throw in your thoughts on? Because this same issue we talked about last week, and eventually that other lady was caught and handed over to the police. And I'm wondering, you're catching them and handing them over to the police. Is that a criminal crime? There is more to this. Mental health can be checked. Financial health as well. Economic health. All these and more. And we can say the senseless war that is ongoing is of course contributing. Because just yesterday, remember, we talked about the prostitution, what girls do, and we already know what prostitution can lead to. So when they get pregnant, this and more they do. Let's get to hear your thoughts, sir.
Well, I think last week, or early this week, I think Monday or so, Tuesday, we had a discussion on this topic. Now, baby abandonment is a big issue. It can be a crime. It can be, it's not, even if it's not a crime, It is a social evil. The war has brought so many issues on the table. And the first responsibility is to be responsible for yourself. First, we don't know the father of the abandoned child. It could be somebody, an adult. It could even be a soldier. But sometimes it can even be just another boy of the same age with the guy who has no responsibility, nothing to pay, to show for parenting. And so, why have we gotten to this point? There's total moral decadence in our own children, brought by Yawande. At the very least, the people I know, almost every family in Amazonia is a family. If by some type of coincidence you get pregnant, deliver the child, have the child delivered. Your financial ability notwithstanding, you have somebody to fall back on in the family, an uncle, an auntie, a sister, a grandmother to take care of that child. And so, why do you take yourself to this point? If these people are not there, this is war. If they have been killed, if you have lost everybody, there are still social services there for you. Go to the Kali Mission, I think they have services for orphans. Go to the Presbyterian church, these established churches. They will help you. Because you've killed the child here, the child is dead, that is going to haunt that girl for the rest of her life. No matter whether she's punished or not, it's going to haunt her for the rest of her life. She has become a social outcast. I see her picture. Where will she go to? She has become a social outcast. But how old is she? Probably 16, 17. So what is the journey she has to go through life because of what has happened to her? Yes, there's war, but take care of yourself first. And the community and the family will take care of you next. And so our responsibility is to bring up our own children. It's unfortunate that you have a child, 17, 16 or below, getting pregnant. Those shows of the moral upbringing of that child. Yes, the government of Yaoundé is so bad. There are no hospitals. There's nothing. But the responsibility is essentially yours, the family. The government has never been better since 1972. That's always been worse. And so blaming such things on them is right, but there's no way the solution will come from. So bring up your children, especially the girls. If you have to go out having sex around, it must be protected. If you go for unprotected sex, you know the risk you are taking. We don't know what that child could have become. Maybe the child could have become the next president of Amazonia. Could have been a surgeon, could have been a pilot, could have been anything in the world. We don't know. And so, why go through all this? Why can't you just close your legs and sit down? You are unable to support yourself. And then, of course, you are bringing forth children that you cannot even support. The government is never coming to help you. We can blame the government, and I do agree. But that government is not going to improve anytime soon. It has never improved for all the years. This is Amazonia. That's an Amazonian child. But I remember this morning, before we came online, I saw a news item from Yaoundé of a young girl like this one who has successfully given birth to a baby in the hospital in Yaoundé. And she was in prison in the hospital. She would not go home because they needed her to pay 350,000. She was lying at the balcony of the hospital with her child until some good Samaritans came and rescued her by paying the fees. This is in the heart of Yaoundé. If they are not doing it to their own, do you expect them to do it for you? They won't do it for you, first, because they don't have the means. Secondly, and most importantly, because they want to punish you. You're an Amazonian. It does not matter if all Amazonians die, that is not something important to them. And so that is the bottom line. Let us educate our children, especially the girl children, because young boys can go around making all those things. They don't have any consequence. They don't even know where it's all implemented that girl. Girls do it, they have a lot of social consequences. You have a baby, like again, that's where you see her standing there. Where's she going to live? She has become a social outcast. She will try to pick the pieces, but that's going to haunt her the rest of her life because that's her own child. I'm not sure what the conditions under which she had the baby. But again, even if you are raped, which is the worst situation, and you get pregnant, the best solution is to fall back on your support system. The social support system that we have is very, very strong. Fall back on the family, fall back on the church, and they'll give you the minimum that they can afford. That will save you, save your life. She's lucky that she successfully gave birth to a child. Because I'm sure she was not going to any clinic when she was pregnant. She could have died in that process. That's highly possible. And so, if you get into that difficulty again, my advice, which is so personal and family wise, is fall back on the social structure that we have. The family first, you have an aunt, you have a cousin, you have a friend who will help you. In default, we still have social services structure so well in Amazonia. Fall back on the church. Most importantly, established churches, the Catholics, the Presbyterians, the Baptists. You find some assistance somewhere there. And then that will take the trauma out of you. That's my contribution at this point. Over to you.
And I must add here that that's, of course, a fatherly advice here. Moving on, we have the mob injustice happening. Now, an alleged thief has been killed in Bamenda. The population is fed up with the corrupt colonial judicial system that is rather accompanying criminals than prosecute them. A man in his prime has been beaten to death at Ntamuche in Nkwem village, Bamenda chief town of the Midland zone of the Federal Republic of Amazonia. The young man in his 20s was part of a gang that moved around harassing inhabitants of the quarter, asking for support and using handmade toy guns to frighten and threaten their victims. The action of these hoodlums have caused a lot of harm to the credibility of the Amazonian State Army as the colonial authorities attribute these actions. Fortunately, enough Amazonians are very aware of the modus operandi of the Amazonian State Army. And so there is clear distinctions. These thieves met their match when they broke into a home in Ntamuche where the parents were absent. The gang demanded that the children hand over the money they had made from selling water in plastic bags around the quarter and in Bamenda town. The children claimed they had no money. One of the bandits allegedly took a bag from a chair in the parlor and they started running. The report also added that the children shouted for help and the population came out. 2 gang members escaped while one stumbled on a stone and fell. He was subsequently administered mob justice, leading to his untimely death. The stand of the people to administer mob justice is because the colonial judiciary is not very active, or should we use the word worthy, to entrust a criminal to. It has been proven that criminals entrusted to these colonial thugs later get released and then making them their friends. But should mob justice be the answer? You're not supposed to take laws into your hands. But in a related development, or not so related, we have a water pipeline that has ruptured in Yaoundé, resulting in the tragic loss of 2 lives. The rupture is caused by erosion of the city roads to the point of rupturing the water pipe. Well, this particular incident is not just alone, as you can see the video. It's a lot of erosion, a lot of water, and a lot of rupturing happening in the city. While the full report goes on to add that this water has been running for a while and the people are not happy with their incident. Well, residents are devastated by an incident that unfolded in Yaoundé's Ngosu neighborhood on Monday, January 27, 2025, where a ruptured water pipeline resulted in the tragic loss of 2 lives. The victims, a 3-year-old child and 24-year-old Hajara, were overcome by the intense water pressure that inundated the area near the Ngosu fabric factory. This is a direct consequence of the colonial region's failure to construct roads, while a recent observation hosts that Ambazonia has the least number of paved roads in the Cameroons. It is unfortunate for the family of the Hajara to have lost their daughter this soon thanks to the negligence of Paul Biya's regime. Their devastation comes from the fact that she just bagged a first-class degree. Her life was cruelly cut short when she was swept away by these powerful floods and water. The father of the 2-year-old, who tragically passed away in Hardship, expressed outrage and sadness. He viewed that a problem with the water pipeline had been reported to the water distribution company 2 months prior, but no action was taken. This inaction ultimately leads to the tragic loss of life. The fact that the problem of the imminent rupture of the water pipe was reported to the colonial authorities with no prompt response calls for, colonial regime to accept responsibility for these deaths of young men stealing with toy guns. They just have to accept all of these deaths put together. Bar.Tim Mbeseha.
Well, we've said this many times before, and they are doubting Thomases. You see, the idea of theft is a phenomenon worldwide. Theft is not everywhere in the world. There's no country in the world where you don't find theft regulated in their criminal or penal code. Go to China, go to the United States where we are. They are all thieves. There's a rule to follow. Go to London, go to Nigeria. The phenomenon of stealing is common. What is important is that thieves, if caught, are handled legally in the right manner. And so where you find people taking upon themselves to kill suspects, because they are not yet convicted, to kill suspects of theft by themselves or any crime, it goes only to explain one thing: the total absence of governance. Governance has collapsed, totally collapsed. Otherwise, even if there was a functional government there, these people who took the life of that young man, for whatever reason, will face trial, because you're not allowed to do that. The law does not allow you to take the law into your own hands. But they do it with impunity. There's no one to report to. There's no court to be judged. So there's total collapse of governance, most particularly in Ambazonia. You could go up to the police station and you may not find one. You may find one in Bamenda, in Buea, in those big cities. But theft is not a thing of the cities alone. Theft is everywhere. I've seen people in villages being killed for stealing a bunch of plantains or a bunch of bananas. What is that? That's something that will cost less than 5,000 in the Cameroun market. And then you take someone's life with impunity. Why? Because the judicial system has failed, has totally collapsed, along with it. And so once there's no governance, everybody takes the law into their own hands. I've said this also before. You see, what they have even adopted officially, self-defense, what do you call it, vigilante, to police the villages and the towns, is criminal. That is not allowed by law. Once you mortgage your own security to vigilante, people who are not trained, what do you expect from them? You expect Ngaribu. They armed the vigilantes in Ngaribu. They went down to Ngaribu, killed the citizens, killed the children, and in order to hide their crime, they set fire on the corpses with impunity. So what has happened to them, nobody knows. And so once you get a government that has completely collapsed, like the one in Cameroon, you find these type of things happening. That guy who stole, who's alleged to have stolen, again, is barely a suspect. And so in regular, normal societies, he should be brought to trial. He should stand trial, face the justice, get his own lawyers, defend himself, and be punished. But for the villagers, the victims of the failure of government to take the law into their hands, killing people the way they want. Again, as far as I'm concerned, shall we say that is what they call normalcy in a normal society? Should Amazonia have found itself here? Certainly not. But it's not even just a question of Amazonia, because what they call Yaoundé is a total failed state, a complete failed state. And that will take us to the second topic that you brought there. You see water in Goso breaking out and killing children. That is not a stream flowing through the town. A natural disaster. It's a man-made disaster. Once you canalize water into a pipe, you must be able to control it. Lock it when you want to lock. Open it at the time you want to open. Open the quantity that you want it to go down the streets or to the people. If you're not doing this, what is the main option of that water? That they call the water company. What is their role? And if I got it right, and listen to that story from Yaoundé, the people of that Ngoso had complained time with that number. They are going to the water corporation company and said, look, this thing looks dangerous. They were simply snubbed. And so you see what is happening now? They have killed, the water has killed people, or at least a person. And of course, it has destroyed countless houses. The financial losses are unimaginable. And what do you have at the end of the day? Nobody is going to be held accountable for it. In a regular system, that company should be closed down. It should be closed down. If you have to canalize water in a pipe, the pipe differ depending upon where you're going to. Some are 6 millimeters, some are 2 feet big, and so on and so forth. They are made with some storage that will not get broken by themselves. But if you choose to go the cheap way, that is the consequence of this. And so what do we say? Cameroon have the government they deserve. Because if this is what they can get in their own country after 40 years, if that is that water they can get, you see the color of the water, that is the water that is supposed to supply to the people to drink. The color by itself tells you that water is it's not consumable. It's not worth drinking. And so they have the government they deserve, which is why we're fighting. We don't need to be there with them. We should never have been there. We'll fight until we get out of it. We'll pick the pieces where we can, and we'll rebuild where possible. Because this nonsense of one and indivisible Cameroon that has brought us to this state of war, that has brought us to this suffering, was rejected from day one by our own people. The so-called, if you remember something we call the Fuman Conference. What happened in Fuman, they went there purportedly to draw a constitution. But they didn't draw one. On the 17th of July, that about 11 o'clock, there was an opening speech made by Agijo, Foncha, and Endele. At 2:45, they resumed the sittings. Now they have been forced to look at the constitution of the Republic amended. And the first thing they did was that constitution was presented to them. Article 1, they started with Article 1. Article 1, 2 stated that the Federal Republic of Cameroon shall be one and indivisible. The people said, no, nothing like one and indivisible. That the Attorney General of Southern Cameroon in the conference, they argued the legal issues and said there's nothing like one and indivisible Cameroon. And said this thing will not work. They succeeded. Because 2 days after, when they were closing the conference on the 21st, Ayejo came publicly and acknowledged people are opposed to the one and indivisible Cameroon. We're taking out the word one and indivisible, and they took it out. That's why it doesn't feature in the 1961 so-called federal constitution. It doesn't feature there. But it came back in 1972 after they have successfully subdued the Indelis, the Funchals, and so on. The 1972 constitution started with one indivisible. It has gone down like that, which has been the cause of this war, which we are fighting. For one indivisible, our forefathers are rejected permanently on the 17th of July 1961, which rejection was confirmed by Ahijo himself on the 21st of July 1961, when he publicly said, "We are withdrawing, we are dropping the word one and indivisible in this constitution." It has come back, it has become a weapon of war. If you say anything different from one and indivisible, they hunt you down. History doesn't hide. The facts remain the facts. Those who doubt this can cross-check the facts. I have the facts in the minutes of the 1961 conference, so-called formal conference. And so we have to get out of this nonsense from people specialized in manipulations, specialized in fraud, specialized in doing whatever thing normal human beings will not accept. I'm sure we'll never have that water nonsense in Bamenda or anywhere in Amazonia. Never she will have that. I'm sure. Back to Amazonia, criminals shall be dealt with accordingly. The mob will not take justice into their own hands, because we shall be a lawful, not a lawless community. Over to you.
Well, of course, a lawful community is all we ask for. All right, the last report here from the news from the home front. While overburdened by the failures of the Biya regime, La République du Cameroun Colonial Sergeant publicly disposes of weapons, uniform, quitting the Colonial Army on the 29th of January. Well, the failed La République du Cameroun regime is fast losing those that are used to push their colonial tendency into Amazonia. An overburdened La République du Cameroun official sergeant, who is known as Zengule, serving in the 14th Motorized Infantry Battalion in Batwa. Batwa is also known as the chief town of La République du Cameroun East Region. Well, he has publicly disposed of weapons, uniforms, quitting the Colonial Army on the 29th of January 2025. And this is as a result of the La République du Cameroun's failed regime. The colonial regime overstretched its army, most especially engaging them in the war in Amazonia, a war that is greatly exhausting these thugs. Some of these colonial officers, after seeing what their colleagues had suffered in the war in Amazonia, deserted the army. Today, in a video just like you're seeing, another colonial officer, Sergeant Zangule, has resigned, undressing in public, giving out his gun and uniform back. This is a demonstration of bravery on the part of his colonial officer. Many are presently in Amazonia, pushing on what La République du Cameroun colonial agenda gives them and wishes they do. Well, it is time for all colonial army officers to say to the excesses of La République du Cameroun, no. Just like that. Bar.Tim Mbeseha. This report describes this man as brave. Probably
It's a brave guy. It's a brave guy, but the untold story there, I'm told, the unreported story is, the guy had been deployed, he has been transferred to the northwest, they call it, to some company over there. That is to the war front. And the guy said, look, I'm not going there. Rather than go there, I will quit the army. And publicly, he quit. The problem is whether after those pictures, that guy will be allowed to survive. Because the criminal government, they will look for him to kill him, unless he's smart enough to run away from them. Why would he quit the army? he quits because in every country where you go, where you deploy soldiers in the war front, they have a war. There's no doubt about that. There are benefits that go with being in the war front. You have risk allowance. You have all those things that accompany your being there. Those soldiers who are deployed to the northwest and southwest, as you call it, they don't have those allowances. Even they are provided for, they have less than a tenth of it. The money is all stolen. They don't have food even to eat. What do? They steal. I remember those of them who were in my own village, in my own places some times ago. They ate everything they could find there. They stole people's chickens and ate. They ate goats. They ate pigs. They even ate rats because they had no food to eat. And so there's a price of going to war. Also, there's also deployment. You have to give people, they are human beings. When they are stressed in the war front, they need time off to go be with their families, to get out of the stress, maybe after a year or 6 months. But people have been deployed in the northwest and southwest, as they call it, for years. They have not been able to move. Not because they lack soldiers, they have the soldiers, but they don't have the ones that they can move there. Because the bulk of them are the children of big men. They will not deploy the son of a big man to Bamenda or to Boya or to northwest and southwest, they call it. Because the reason is that they will kill you. So the few who have no dependence, powerful background, are sent there to remain there forever. And we've seen them die. So what that guy has done publicly is a reminder to the world that this war is unacceptable. The soldiers who are there fighting and killing us, they are not even doing it because they want to do it. The bulk of them are forced to do it. Because as long as you're in the army, it's something that you take the orders first and complain later on. So these people are prisoners of their own making. And so we can all say congratulations to that young man for bearing the brunt, for carrying the mantle. We only wish that his colleagues who are watching him there would take a cue from what he's done. We only wish that their commanders who are standing there watching him, and who are not even watching him now, who are watching him on video as you and me are watching, will learn that there's something wrong in what they are doing. That war was uncalled for. It is not a winnable war, so you better stop it, pack and go back to where you came from. By so packing and going back to where you came from, at least you minimize your own losses. The few who have survived will be available, at least they will not die. Those who have starved will be able to eat. Those who have left their families, their wives, their children, will be able to rejoin their families in peace. This war was uncalled for. It is not winnable by Yaoundé. You will never win it because no people ever wins a war against his own people. Absolutely not. You will not win it. You should have learned this by now. That's why you estimated that would take 2 weeks, as said by Mr. Pobia. But now in the 8th year, soon in the 9th year, 2 weeks is how many times into 8 years? Multiply 8 by 52 weeks in a year and see what times 9 will give you how many weeks that's elapsed. And so it is a quick reminder to the people in Yaoundé, to their brothers and sisters who are sponsoring the war, let them know that this war is not winnable. They are not going to win. The best option is walk away in some with a tail between your legs and say we made a mistake. Let Ambazonia go. The price is not worth being paid by the citizens. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Bar.Tim Mbeseha. Thank you so much for being part of Undaunted tonight. Is at this point we'll let you go, and I'm sure that all of the authorities and all of the necessary quarters have heard all of the instructive words that you have for today. Coming up next is news across the globe and Africa.
Southern Cameroonians, Ambazonians, today na Thursday, January the 30th, 2025. This one Ambazonian State Army National Spokesperson that come live this morning. I go send to one of a second salute for all our field marshals, generals, commanders, and colonels who they fight so hard for defend Ambazonia from the hands of French Cameroon, barbaric and terrorist soldiers who will be sent by Paul Biya, Hitler, Bill Vondo, Barthélemy, the terrorists sponsored by France and some other criminal Western nations. Fellow Ambazonians, I come for sending serious warning out there. May all Ambazonians make good day on high alert, because the days ahead it will be deadly against French Cameroon occupational forces and administrators in Ambazonia. And any election they go collect and they go face death penalty. And they remain Ambazonia. So make una know say we get our national lockdown where we go start on the 10th, it end on the 12th of February 2025. Make all man day on high alert against French Cameroon occupational youth day in Ambazonia. For that one, we need the clown. Any defaulter, they go face the bullet. Now, what would they? Make una see how this criminal funds them. They don't organize themselves. Go meet up for Yaoundé. According to them, they endorse for the next presidential election for French Cameroon. Yes, that one even an issue. We know French Cameroon agenda. We know say France from 1960. When they put Ahidjo power, they be key Mandre Arimbida, where we demand for French Cameroon independence. Yes, they put Ahidjo for power. Then they send Paul Biya like a spy for his Ahidjo government. When Ahidjo make Mago, they overturn Ahidjo, put Paul Biya can overthrown Ahidjo now, assimilate Ambazonians, change everything from federation to unity to La République du Cameroun for the original name again independence. And they tell Ambazonians, say we know all the game. There is no way where French Cameroon will get democratic election inside French Cameroon, because France get their plans and Paul Biya is then another puppet when they champion French Cameroon agenda inside the Cameroons. I tell una today, say we know say Paul Biya go die for power because France they keep for power for their interests. And I know say France it don't lost grip for so many African French countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, Chad. So France now a last hope now French Cameroon. But thank God, some Ambazonians, we don't take the bull by the horn. We don't care about French Cameroon presidency. When I take special note, Southern Cameroon was a state with democracy will be exercised from Indeli to Foncha to Ngomjua, where French and Saudi Cameroons it be get a good democracy. So I advise we, someone could take special note on that. We know say France, their agenda, they will keep Biya in power, and CPDM now an aquatic platform where they work towards their own achievement for their interests. They don't care about their citizens. But we tell when I say we don't take arms for defend our interests. All those funds them where they go for Yaoundé, go meet up Biya, say the industrial president, we don't care about them. They don't represent Ambazonians. If we find them anywhere as Ambazonian, they go face death penalty. When I remember when they found of Bambalang, they be arrested. They found them so they be arrested. They will release them, forgive them the chance for grace. But this time, if we get to those criminals, they don't get any second chance. I believe say they will remain for Yaoundé. The leak probably is show and the weapon be issue. The truth now say we there for war. Any fun where we go Yaoundé, remain for Yaoundé, not pass Ambazonia, because we have Ambazonia for your own risk. Any day we go find you, it's Ambazonia, you go collect. Saudi Cameroon is there for war. I advise all Ambazonians, we don't care about Paul Biya presidency. Paul Biya the French Cameroon puppet. Nobody they go challenge Biya under France. So we don't care about the interests of presidency. We remain Ambazonians. We then neutral. We then a separate state since 2017. Saudi Cameroon, we don't tell French Cameroon, say stay your lane, we stay our lane. Probably have to go confess for France. So they don't tell us similar with no fit because of what? Our identity will be different nation. So they tell Ambazonians, we're giving a warning on daily basis, more than on high alert. Mr. Manuel Tosin here. If you catch any mess Ambazonia, when we got to say election, campaign, or whatsoever, you go face death penalty. We not go judge you, we not ask you question. As you find you guilty, you go collect and you go to a Kema. For say Kema don't go. We don't give anybody any second chance. Enough is enough. If French Cameroun care, may they remove Paul Biya for 1,000 years, you know, concern Ambazonia. With the sending message for one take special note. When I not say France, you know, organize itself. Paul Biya represent France. Now what I want to say and say French Cameroun, they destroy our education. When I go tell we say French Cameroun, universities them, they not get nobody where if you rule, if you stand for represent French Cameroun or represent French Cameroun for any era for governance, unless Paul Biya, because Paul Biya is a person who France put up power for their interest. So I tell any phone will be there for Yaoundé. Remain for Yaoundé. Otherwise, you go collect. The truth now say we will go send you for your early grave. That one not true. We tell Ambazonians, stay at home and stay safe. Respect the rules of this war. No election in Ambazonia. Any man will catch you with anything campaign for any political party in Ambazonia. You go face death penalty. No say will not be tell una. When I know say these forms they will probably now French Cameroon agent. We respect kingdom, we respect royalty, but we disrespect any individual. We go use our royalty, our kingdom, our chiefdom for their personal interest. All those funds and so they don't represent Ambazonia. If we see them anywhere, we go mess them up big time and they go face death penalty. But when I stay at home, when I stay safe, when I remember again once more, our lockdown will start on the 10th, it end on the 12th of February 2025. But when I respect the rules of the war and when I stay safe, our main concern our citizens, our main concern our civilians, our main concern our fight for defend our interests, our resources, our people and our land. Saudi Cameroon is our state, Ambazonia now our land. So any man will go against the rules, he will face the consequences. All those funds and all those criminals them, we follow, we monitor them closely, and they don't go capture them. They don't get no grace. When I stay safe, I will not stay strong.
All right. Meanwhile, ECOWAS reacts as Alliance of Sahel States launch new passports. So the Alliance of Sahel States, which includes Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, they've been on a long thing. But right about now, they've just launched a new passport, and this is a pretty big deal. Apparently, this new passport is part of their efforts to reinforce their sovereignty and foster regional security cooperation. It's also a way for them to reduce their dependency on the border of West African region after they exited the economic community of West African states. The exit of these three countries from ECOWAS took effect on the 29th of January 2025, and it's been a year since they announced their decision to leave. This new passport is seen as a critical component of their new path, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. The World Bank has been supporting the issuance of fundamental IDs in ECOWAS countries, including some of the Sahel states, through the West African Unique Identification for Regional Integration and Inclusion. Not just that, that's the Inclusion Worry Program. Well, it's worth noting that the introduction of this new passport could address some concerns around regional integration and security, but providing an alternative means of identification and travel. Overall, this is a significant development in the region, and it will be interesting to see how ECOWAS and other regional organizations respond to it. But on the side, I read somewhere where ECOWAS says it's leaving its doors open for Sahel states whenever they want to return. Will they want to return? Well, we would watch and see. But on the other end, Congo is not even having it easy. So the situation in Democratic Republic of Congo is becoming increasingly dire, with Rwanda, backed by M23 rebels, making significant gains in the eastern part of the country. The rebels have taken control of the city of Goma, a key urban center, and are reportedly advancing south to take more territory. These has prompted a strong response from Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi, who has vowed to restore government authority in the east and launched a vigorous and coordinated response against the rebels. In a televised address to the nation, Tshisekedi had criticized the international community for inaction and for not doing enough to address their escalating security crisis. He called on all Congolese to join together and support the army's fight to retake control, saying, "Be sure of one thing, the Democratic Republic of Congo will not let itself be humiliated or crushed." In his words, he continues to say, "We will fight and we will triumph." The president's words were met with widespread support from the Congolese people, who are eager to see an end to the violence and instability that has plagued their country for decades. The world is also taking notice of the situation, which the United Nations and other organizations warning of a looming humanitarian crisis. The UN has estimated that over 500 people have been forced from their homes, and the city of Goma is facing severe shortages of electricity, water, and food. The situation is further complicated by the fact that the M23 rebels are receiving support from Rwanda, which has led to tensions between the two countries. In an effort to address the situation, the East African Regional Bloc has called for a virtual summit to discuss the crisis. The summit, which was attended by leaders from several countries in the region, included Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, called for direct engagement between the government and the rebels. However, tensions are rising between South Africa and Rwanda, with Rwanda's President Paul Kagame accusing South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa of distorting their private conversation about the situation. And so we can say that the situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo is complex and multifaceted, with a long history of conflict and instability. The country has been plagued by rebel groups and militias for decades, and the current crisis is just the latest irritation of this ongoing problem. With the support of the international community and the determination of the Congolese people, it is possible that a peaceful resolution can be found. It is possible. One of the key challenges facing the Congolese government is the need to address the underlying issues that has driven the conflict, which is what we talked about. Also for Ambazonia, discussing the underlying issues, that's all. This includes addressing the grievances of the rebel groups, also discussing the grievances of Ambazonia, as well as providing support and services to the affected population. The government will also need to work to rebuild trust and confidence with the world, which has been eroded by years of corruption and mismanagement. But we are saying that in the long term, the goal will be to build a more stable and secure future for the Democratic Republic of Congo. This will require a sustained effort to address the underlying causes of the conflict. Not just that, also as well as a commitment to good governance and rule of law. The world will need to work closely with the Congolese government, probably the UN, and people to build a more prosperous and peaceful future for all. The conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo has what I can call significant implications for the region and the world at large. The country is a major producer of minerals and so many other natural resources. And so this conflict has disrupted global supply chains of this mineral. Yes, the conflict has disrupted global supply chains. The conflict has also had a significant impact on regional stability, with neighboring countries such as Rwanda and Uganda drawn into the conflict. What has the world done, the critical role they have played in resolving the conflict and building more stable and secure future for the Democratic Republic of Congo? This should include providing diplomatic support, financial assistance, technical expertise to the Congolese government and people. Oh well, while we all watch, we also need to work to address the underlying causes of this conflict and other conflicts happening in Africa, the war in Amazonia, the Sahel group. Not just that, the poverty, inequality, lack of access to basic education, economic opportunities, and so on. Oh well, so much to talk about in Africa. Let's get the news across the globe. start with the BRICS. The emergence of BRICS as a significant international force is a fascinating development, and its expansion is definitely raising eyebrows with the addition of 5 new members and 8 new partner countries. The bloc is becoming increasingly diverse, which is both a strength and a weakness. On the other hand, this diversity brings together a wide range of perspectives and experiences, allowing BRICS to tackle complex global issues from multiple angles. On the other hand, it also creates potential challenges in terms of unity and cohesion, as different member countries may have competing interests and a whole lot of things aside from competing interests, their priorities as well. The integration of new members like Iran and Saudi Arabia, for example, brings into the fold 2 regional powers with a history of competition in the Middle East. Similarly, the inclusion of Egypt and Ethiopia introduces countries with differing views on issues like the governance of the Nile River, and then there are the well-known tensions between China and India, which could potentially create friction within the bloc. Despite these challenges, BRICS is pushing forward with its expansion, with even more countries potentially joining in a few years. Analysts are right to question whether BRICS will be able to challenge the leadership of the traditional powers like the US, UK, and the European Union, given its diversity and potential lack of unity. However, it's also possible that BRICS could use its diversity to its advantage, because they can leverage the unique strength and perspective of each member country to create a more inclusive and representative global governance system. As the bloc continues to grow and evolve, it will be interesting to see how it navigates these challenges, opportunities, disadvantages, and whether it can indeed become a major player on the global stage. On the other hand, the EU officials are considering a pretty significant move, resuming purchases of Russian pipeline gas as part of a potential settlement of the Russia-Ukraine war. According to the Financial Times, Hungarian and German officials are advocating for this proposal, arguing that it could give both Russia and Europe incentives to maintain a peace deal while stabilizing the continent's energy market. This news comes almost a month after Ukraine halted the transit of Russian gas through its territory to EU, which has sparked protests from some EU members like Slovenia and Hungary that still rely heavily on Russian gas. The current situation, very complex, with the EU trying to diversify its energy supplies while also dealing with the fallout from the Russian-Ukraine war. The end of the gas transit contract between Russia and Ukraine could have significant implications for the EU's energy market, particularly for countries like Australia, Hungary, Slovenia, that rely heavily on Russian gas. In fact, the EU has a non-binding goal of stopping all Russian gas imports by 2027. But the reality is that some member states are still heavily dependent on Russian gas. There are a few possible scenarios that could play out in the coming months. Speculated, by the way. One option we are thinking is that the EU could replace Russian gas with LNG imports from other countries, which would require significant investments in infrastructure and could be expensive. Other option is that Ukraine could replace transiting Russian gas with Azeri gas, although this would require significant increase in the Azerbaijan gas production and could be complex to implement. A third option is that the EU, Ukraine, and Russia could negotiate a new agreement that would allow Russian gas to continue flowing to Europe, although this would require a significant concession from all parties and all parties involved. Ultimately, the EU needs to find a way to balance its energy needs with its geographical goals, and that's not going to be easy. The EU should seek a common position on the ending of the current contract that governs Russian gas and the Russian gas transit through Ukraine, and it should be prioritized, maintaining some level of European control over member states, which is remaining energy dependence on Russia. This could involve introducing the EU-wide sanctions on Russian gas imports, including an import tax and volume limits to restrict the total amount of Russian gas entering the EU markets. We'll see how far that goes. But that's where we draw the curtain on tonight and Undaunted. But before we go, let's take a look at the major stories. Oh, well, tonight we talked about the alarm over teachers' absenteeism in secondary schools. Also tonight, talked about a young girl being dumping the fruit of her womb after intentionally forcing the baby out prematurely. We gave a report of an alleged thief that has been caught and killed in Bamenda. Also tonight, we talked about the overburdened failure of Biya's regime, where a sergeant publicly disposed his weapons. On the African scene, we brought Congo and Rwanda to the scene, while on the foreign scene, we talked about the BRICS on the rise. That's all on tonight's Undaunted. Bringing into the news untold stories on behalf of the technical crew and, of course, Bar.Tim Mbeseha. We say thank you for being part of tonight's Undaunted again, and it's good night and God bless.